Hi everybody, and welcome to the next edition of Match Memories. The last one I did was 2010, and obviously the plan's just to carry on. Where they're quite successful, people are seeming to enjoy the stories behind these big events. But what I did, not really knowing how successful they were going to be and how popular, I obviously skipped a few. And I found myself, instead of wanting to go on from 2010, to go back to a couple of the real important ones where lessons were learnt, mistakes were made, definitely, but still good results. And like I say, just talk you through some of the sort of, the sort of untold stories. So what I'm going to do for this edition of Match Memories is go back to 2005, which was in Finland. Now, it was on a big shipping canal, and there had previously, I think it was 95, been a World Championships there. And I think it's pronounced the Saimaa Canal. They do a lot of fishing there. I think it's spelled S-I-A-M-A-A. So pronounce it how you will. And for anyone watching in Finland, I do apologise if my pronunciation is incorrect. But anyway, what a fantastic place Finland is. Absolutely beautiful, picturesque. And for those of you that haven't been there, one of the strangest things about Finland, especially that time of year, is it doesn't get dark. And there's quite a funny story that I'll go into. But literally, like 12, 1, 2 o'clock in the morning, where everywhere else I've ever been is pitch black, it's just like dusk, almost daylight. It just doesn't get dark. So that was quite a strange sort of environment to be in. Not that we were ever out that sort of late, but, like if you woke up in the middle of the night to go to the loo or to get a drink, it was light outside, and it was like really, really strange. But anyway, going back to Finland, the team's 2005, mind you. So the team's me and Stevie travelling together again. As you've probably established by now, he was my, long-term travelling companion, roomie, and sort of mentor, if you like. But 2005, the team was myself and Stevie, Stuart and Alan, and Des and Sean. So we travelled to Finland. Now, a little bit of a story there. Alan, I think it was Alan, Sean and Stuart hired a van and drove with all of the tackle, which meant before we even went, us taking our tackle up to Derby to drop it off to Sean, me, Stevie and Des. So that was done, and me, Stevie and Des, we got the good end of the bargain, because I think for them to get there, it sort of included over 1,000 miles driving, 3 ferries, and that's just to get there. So we're still in debt, and I think if we ever have to go back there, it would certainly be my turn to do the driving and them to fly. But me, Stevie and Des, we flew. We hired a van. I think it was the oldest, most clapped out van in Finland that Stevie managed to hire. A great big Transit, but it did do the job once we'd figured out how to steer it and everything else. But like I say, it did do the job. It was a massive van. The hotel where we stayed, fantastic, absolutely beautiful, plenty of room. The food was fantastic, and as I've already said, it's a very, very important part of the trip to be comfortable. Those of you that go and fish festivals and go to Ireland and various other places, you know the importance of having nice digs, so to speak, to stay in. There's nothing worse than getting back after a long day's fishing and where you're staying isn't that nice. And luckily, touch wood, with the England team, we've always stayed in really nice places that have been, comfortable. The food was fantastic. But anyway, let's get on to the fishing. It's a massive long canal, so there's loads and loads of places to practice. Again, we went for 2 weeks. Like I said, a little bit of a mission for the lads to get there, but they did a fantastic job. And we actually practiced upstream of the match length. There were loads of different places to fish Now, this particular canal in Finland, there's massive boulders. Both banks are lined with massive boulders. And I've actually got a picture of a boat here going up it. And when I say big boats, I mean proper big boats. And the reason that these boulders were in place, you can see there's a picture. You can just see how big. I'll try and get it in focus. I think that's about right. But you can see a massive boat there taking wood up the river, and literally when these boats went past, they would just suck the water down and your whole net would be out of the water, and then you get the wash back. And these massive boulders were in place, obviously, to ensure the bank didn't wash away. And it's something you do see a lot on these rivers through Europe and, you know, up into Scandinavia. You see a lot of these type of canals and venues lined with these boulders just to save the bank. But what was a major problem, obviously, that these had rolled down and you're actually fishing in amongst them. And when I say fishing in amongst boulders, I mean some of these boulders were like 1 metre round. It was unbelievable. And plumbing up was an absolute nightmare. Now, you've probably heard me speak a lot when I talk about my commercial fishing and that, about finding flat spots. Even if it's sloping, as long as it's flat and clean, you still catch plenty of fish. Those little bumpy areas and that, obviously fish don't tend to feed on them that well. So if you can imagine like the worst possible commercial you've ever been to plumb up, times by 100, that's what this place was like. There were very few areas where you could actually get onto the canal bed. Slider wasn't an option, purely because of the boat traffic and the movement. These venues, they sway back and forth, and you know, they're down 1 minute, then they're back up. Very important to have a depth marker. Very important indeed. And that's not just there, that's on a lot of venues. I find myself using a depth marker more and more. And it's amazing sometimes, you know, you can go to a venue and say to people afterwards at the presentation or you know, you say, oh, it's come up 2 inches today. And they're like, has it? You know, and they didn't even know. So, you know, again, another little tip on these sort of venues, always put a depth marker in. So I can remember the first day's practice of the unofficial week. So we've gone for 2 weeks. So the unofficial practice week, plumbing up, it was just like, oh my God. You know, how do they, you can't catch fish here. You'd literally plumb up like dunk, and then you'd move it 6 inches and your float would just go down 2 foot. And then you'd move it to the right and it would be out of the water 2 foot. Or you'd lean out and it would just go out of sight. You'd come in and it would be out. It was just like, oh my God. But again, I speak a lot when you go to new venues about acclimatization. You know, you've got to adjust to the venue, and day after day of plumbing up, it became the norm. You know, like, oh, it's dropped off 1 metre there. Normally it'd be, I don't believe it, it's dropped. But after a few days of acclimatizing to this venue, you sort of took it in your stride that it was all over the place. There were 1 or 2 little areas where you could reach out and you could just get onto the canal bed, and it was like dunk, lovely. And again, it was something that the Finnish team did on the actual match weekend. And again, I'll get to that because they didn't do it in practice. They tried to keep it under their hat, so to speak. But no, in practice, you know, it was just amazing that there was quite a lot of fish there. Only small little perch, little roach, odd little skimmers. We caught an odd better skimmer, and it was quite good in practice, as I remember we were catching like 5 to 10 pound. It became quite apparent that there was some fish close in, and also that you really had to, you know, get more so in the official practice week, and obviously in the World Championships weekend, but you needed to get your peg, get set up quick, get your rigs on, and then maximise the amount of time you had to actually plumb up and get to know sort of the underwater contours of your peg. You know, like if the canal was going to the left all of a sudden when there was a boat coming, you knew what depth it was 1 metre to the left of your feed. If it went to the right, so getting a sort of mental picture of the underground layout of your peg was very important, and time plumbing up was obviously, you know, very important. And I can remember having all my set. We had this massive old transit van, and I had all my side trays with the legs on and the pole roost on, and my pole rollers all made up, so you could literally get it out of the van, put your box down, dunk, 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 ready. Now I've got as much time as I need to plumb up. Again, in the unofficial practice week, we were catching some fish close, nice dumpy roach. And what I was tending to do was to ball it short and then just cup it long. Just find the nicest bit of my peg where it was flat and just try and fish there. And this was something that I carried on into the official practice week. But going back to the plumbing, it was unbelievable. You'd lose plummet after plummet after plummet. And Stevie and Des actually came up with this fantastic little plummet. And what they did was they got two carbon stems from a pole float and pushed it through and made like a cross through the foam of the bottom of a plummet, so that when it went down it didn't go in the little nooks and crannies and the cracks in the rocks, and then you get stuck and obviously have to snap off. But little things that we learnt in that unofficial week, like to fish heavier mainline, 016 mainline, you're only fishing 08 or 07 hook lengths. But if you got snagged up with a plummet, or your hook got stuck, you wouldn't lose your rig. Very important not to lose your rig, because the last thing you want to do is be faced with a situation of you're trying to fish and there's already a rig there drifting around that's stuck on the bottom. Very, very important. And it's something I still use to this day. I go to a snaggy venue, there's always a big difference between my main line and the hook length, so that I know 100% the hook length's going to go before the main line. Again, another little tip there that I've just picked up along the way. So plumbing up was a major thing. And again, we went into the official practice week now, having learnt a lot. And I was very much, and I still am, into the coriander, which a lot of you may know that I use a lot. I just buy it from the supermarket or the local spice shop. And what coriander does, it enables you to mix your ground bait quite wet, sticky, which, as you know, makes it quite inert, inactive. But by adding coriander just before you're going to use it, it revitalises the ground bait. So the ground bait will go down, you'll get the activity off the coriander, but your ground bait is inert after about 10 minutes. Fantastic, especially for roach, hybrids and skimmers. Absolutely fantastic when you want to draw fish into your peg. And I went into the first day balling it short and cupping it long. I think I was second the first day. Caught some nice roach short, and again, we're not talking like massive weights. I think the first day of practice I had just over 1 kilo, which was good. And these are the sort of venues I like. I'm the first one to be there when it's massive weights and loads of fish everywhere. But Stevie's often talked to me about, on hard venues, about a sense of achievement, of doing well and catching fish when no one else can catch them. A little bit of cat and mouse, like you're just trying to catch each fish, and that's the kind of fishing that I've come to, really enjoy, and if I'm honest, to prefer. When the fish are really hard to come by and you've got to get everything dead right, a lot of people can get caught out, and it can almost be easier to do well if you're doing it right. So plumbing up really became, there were obviously better pegs than others as far as little flat bits. A very odd peg through that practice week, we could actually get onto the canal bed. And we did find that if you could get onto the canal bed, there were skimmers there. It was just, again, a lot of these venues where the bottom goes from rocky onto a nice silty, muddy bottom, then you can catch some better fish. And it became quite apparent through the practice week that if you could get out onto this proper canal bed, that you were going to catch some better fish. So we came up with a few little tactics. Obviously now, we're approaching the weekend, we've got to get the tactics done, because it's soon going to be Saturday morning and we're fishing the World Champs. Now, as the practice week went on, that short line just dwindled and dwindled and dwindled. Probably pressure on the bank, fish being caught, numerous reasons, but the fish tended to move out. Obviously people on the bank, not just the anglers, but now crowds are starting to build. You've got lots of runners, this, that and the other. So the sort of approach we came up with, the short line was sort of almost binned. Now, if you plumbed up long and you had a nice area, what we were tending to do was to ball it. I think we were putting in about 5 or 6 litres, which is a good amount of ground bait. Lake and leam again, the census lake and the census leam, mixed reasonably wet so that you've got a little bit of a cloud, but again, you know, you've got movement on the bank, movement on the water, sorry, so you needed something that would give you a little bit of a cloud to attract fish, but obviously go down to the bottom. And then we were cupping very tight, just past it, just on it, right on your little area. What we were saying to each other, I can remember Stevie saying, what you've got to imagine is you've got a 3-pint bait box on the bottom out there where you've plumbed up, which is the nicest, and you want to feed and fish in this 3-pint bait box. And once you can imagine that, it's amazing how mentally you start understanding exactly what you're doing. Again, with the front rest on, you could hold your float right where you've plumbed up. So important to be accurate, not only with plumbing up, not only with rig placement when you put your rig in, not only with feeding, not only with balling, all of it. You had to get it all dead right just to catch this kilo and a half. You know, if you were lucky, I think the second day of the World Championships, 2 kilo 200 won the match. You know, and this is 5 of the best anglers from every country fishing. So it just showed just how hard and technical the fishing actually was. So going towards the weekend, what we did find though was, again, we've done a lot of fishing in England on canals for skimmers with raw joker, and we found that by putting some grey leam and wetting it a little bit, you could make these little balls of raw joker rock hard that would go down. Now, we found this a real good tactic when you could get onto this flat bit. So you can imagine now it's Friday, we've been practicing for 2 weeks, we're really like the ground bait mix, like I say, has come together. We're using a bit of coriander, lake lean, and just creating this area around. If you can imagine, that's your flat bit, you're balling it just short and around, making a bit of a cloud, and then you're potting balls right on top of the, you know, the little bait box, so to speak, on the bottom, and you're just concentrating. Hooks and line wise, I used a size 18 ultra fine Drennan, 08 double strength, which was, you know, my go-to line at the time. Still use it a lot now, but what I liked about the ultra fines was if you happened to hook a decent fish, and a decent fish there was a 4-ounce perch or a 6-ounce skimmer, if you could get on the canal bed, sometimes you catch fish up to £1. But no, the sort of tactics became very clear, and the fact that we'd all been there for 2 weeks on a very technical, hard venue to fish, we were all understanding it very, very well. And I can remember the final meeting on the Friday night, you know, everybody was just singing from the same hymn sheet, and we knew exactly what we were going to do. Bearing in mind, it's not a regular venue. You look at it and it looks dead straight, everything looks the same, but when you plumb up, like I say, you had good pegs, bad pegs, really bad pegs, and really nice pegs. So it was a little bit, the management did a fantastic job in a way that we had our tactics, but you went to your peg, plumbed up, and decided what you wanted to do as far as, you know, what approach. So Saturday comes round. Unfortunately, Des didn't make the team this year the first day. Did fantastic in practice as always, but you know, when you're in amongst 5 or 6 of the best anglers from England, you know, it can be a little bit difficult. But Des actually missed out on the first day. So the team was myself, Stevie, Sean, Alan and Stuart. Now, during practice, A section was notoriously bad, rocky as anything, and it was like the dreaded sort of A section. Luckily, I drew further down the match length. I think I was in D. Again, got to my peg, got my dad running for me. You know, various other people. Obviously, the 2 marks are there. Lots of people had come over to watch. Wasn't a massive crowd, not like when you fish in Italy or Hungary or places like that where people are, you know, really a lot of people into their match fishing. But it was a good crowd and a fantastically run event, and what was turned out to be one of the most technically interesting venues I've ever fished. So the first day comes round, I'm at my peg. Again, set up, everything's right, got maximised time to sit there and actually plumb the peg up. And what I found was, and I can remember it like it was yesterday. Now we've been the inside line, so we're just fishing 13 metres. And I plumbed up and it was awful in front of me. There's a massive rock, and I just thought, oh, and I can remember I swung it slightly to my left, probably only to about 1 o'clock at the most, and it was like dunk, 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 and you're like, oh my god, it's like I found a real nice bit to fish. And either side of it, it was like a scrapyard. It was awful, but I had this little bit, probably about 1.5 feet square, no more. But I thought to myself, oh my god, you know, this is like a real gift horse, you know, like, I can't believe it. And it's like I moved my float up, coming on, yeah, it is that. And I'm like, I can remember saying to my dad, really fancy this, you know, like that's one of the best pegs I've had in the 2 weeks. So anyway, the match commenced, but before the match commenced, getting all ready, literally looking at my watch all the time, yeah, got half hour. Word came down the bank that one of these massive boats was coming through. So after a 2.5 hour delay to the match, we finally started. Balling it in just short of that area, and you can imagine now, I've got it in my mind, I've got my far bank marker, I know I've got this beautiful little spot, and I've potted it in tight. And again, I got off to a nice start. I caught a couple of decent roach. Remember, I caught a little hybrid. I caught quite a few little perch. I think I've got a catch picture of mine from the first day. And you can see the sort of catch picture. Again, bear with me till I get it in focus. You see, that's the skimmer that I'm on about. I had 2 or 3 nice roach and quite a few little perch. And what was noticeable that day, because they tried to keep the boats off, it was a lot calmer. And I can remember fishing, instead of fishing a gram and a half float, I fished a 0.8, and I was literally just lifting my float, and I caught so many fish, these little perch, like double bloodworm, real lively bloodworm. Alan, by the way, looks after the bloodworm when we're away, and he's absolutely phenomenal. I'm sure he's got some kind of special chemical he puts in there to make them the best bloodworm I've ever seen. Just unbelievable at looking after bait. And we had these little tiny bloodworms, and they were really lively, and you could just fish an inch over depth and just lift your float and drop it, and loads of time. Caught quite a few like ounce perch, and you just drop it back in, it just goes straight under and bump. So I had a real nice match, caught 1 kilo 500 and won my section. I was absolutely over the moon. To go to a venue like that, very technical, and get it right, I was absolutely over the moon. Stevie was second in his section that day, Alan was 4th, Stuart was 4th, and Sean, unfortunately, in the dreaded A section, had an absolute nightmare on a horrific peg. Massive boulders, and I think he was about 20th or 21st in his section. But we came out of the first day intact as a team and right up there. You know, and more importantly, obviously you get pegs like Sean's where there's nothing you can do. You know, you're going to struggle. I've had it, everybody's had it. And unfortunately it happened to Sean this day. But as a team, we were in contact with the top teams, and everything was going to be, you know, right on cue for the next day. We can actually mount an assault and winning the World Championships again. Just trying to see if there's a... no, there's not a picture of... there's a picture of Stevie balling it in there. But I was looking for a picture of the ground bait mix that we have, but I'm sure there was one here. Again, my dad hasn't disappointed me with the memorabilia. But going into the second day, obviously confidence was high. Des came in for Sean. Unfortunately, like I say, you know, it's happened to us all. Sean missed out on the second day, but Des came in. Again, the whole team, that night we had a meeting. Everything was discussed. And it was basically, you know, like, I personally, as an angler, when I'm in a pressured environment, I like having people behind me, especially like Mark Addy, Mark Downs, my dad, all firing advice at me, because I feel like 2, 3, 4 minds are better than one. And and I just feel reassured. And this venue, it taught me to really trust my own judgment under pressure and go from there, because you had to plumb up, read your own peg, show a bit of watercraft, or a lot of watercraft, and make the decisions yourself. Now, not only are you making decisions for yourself, but the team's depending on you, the management are depending on you, and you know, the England team. So there was a lot of pressure on this one. The draw came out for the sections the night before, and I'm in A section. And I can remember thinking, oh my God, you know, like we've done so well after the first day, and now I'm in the dreaded A section. But I've gone to my peg, again, all set up, got everything ready, gone out there, absolutely dead flat. Now, I've been speaking to Sean at night, you know, like, he said, honestly, Will, he said, I plumbed up everywhere and there was nowhere that didn't have like a metre difference. He said it was all over the place. And I can remember I shipped out to 13 metres and you almost hold your breath. You're like, please be nice, please be nice. It went dunk. And I went, that didn't feel like rocky stone. It's like dunk, 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 dunk. And I lifted my plummet and dropped it, and my float was stuck. And I'm like, oh my God. I'm in the middle of the match length, and I'm like, I can get on the... So immediately now I'm thinking on my feet. My dad's got on the radio to Mark, Will's da-da-da-da. So I ended up balling it short, finding a little area short at 10 metres, and I actually potted in 250 mil, which was about 3 or 4 little balls of this leaned up joker, going down this approach of trying to catch some skimmers. And I can remember I started short, hardly caught anything. Caught a little perch, caught a couple of little tiny roach, and it wasn't going to plan. And I saw some fizzing on the long line. And it's like, oh my God. Gone out there, dropped it in immediately. After about 50 minutes it's gone under, and I've caught a 6-ounce skimmer. It's like, don't believe it. You know, like, dropped it in again, caught 2 or 3 little skimmers, then the fizzing stopped. Now, what could happen on these, because bearing in mind when you got to this bottom it was flat, so you could swing out, and I can remember about 50 minutes to go of the match I actually swung my rig out and it settled and just went straight under, and I had the biggest skimmer of the day. Now I actually ended up 4th in my section with just over a kilo, and it was just, you know, unbelievable bit of luck that I could actually get onto this flat bottom. Didn't catch a lot around me. The guy next to me actually said to me, you know, could you get onto the... And I said, yeah. He said, oh, my peg was terrible. I just couldn't get anywhere. So it just goes to show a little bit of luck now and then can go a very long way. I ended up 4th. Stevie was 4th too. Alan actually won his section. Fantastic result as normal. Stuart was 9th and Des was 14th. And we actually hung on to win it as a team. I think we totaled 64 points over the 2 days, which again, on that kind of venue is brilliant. You're going to have ups and downs, but as long as you have more ups and downs, you're going to be there or thereabouts. Belgium were actually 2nd with about 75, 76 points, I think, and Hungary 3rd on a high 70 points. So, you know, we had actually won it quite easily. On a personal note, I ended up 3rd individual, so that gave me a nice bronze medal. I think I've got some pictures here. Alan, I think, was 4th, and if I'm not mistaken, Stevie was 6th individual. You can see there as well, I'll get it in focus. There's me there with my bronze medal. Stevie caught a decent bream on one of the days, which really got him out of trouble. But again, you know, if you catch it, you catch it. And Stevie's always been a master at catching very, very important fish. And there's the front page of us. Absolutely fantastic. Another brilliant result for the England team. Now, like I say, another brilliant result. We've had good years, we've had bad years, but I felt Finland was one that I really wanted to go back and made sure that I covered, because it was such a, as you can probably tell, it's such a technical venue, and I feel very passionate about those sort of venues, and I wanted to share that with you as one of my, probably one of my standout match memories, and I thought it fitting to do the next one, although we've gone back in time even further than the one that I did. But again, a couple of little funny stories came out of this. The Italians, I think, were 4th or 5th, and one of their guys netted a fish on the hooter. As the hooter was going to finish the match, he netted the fish. And there was this big hoo-ha. Does the match finish at the beginning of the hooter or the end of the hooter? And it's like, oh my God. Well, when the hooter sounds, you lift your rig out. So the hooter, so it ended up this fish got disqualified. I can remember Roberto Trabucco, very good friend of mine, awesome angler, but he wasn't happy. He was actually manager. He wasn't happy at all. But the funniest story I've saved till last, and I thought it would be a fitting way to end this match memories. So one evening, as I've said to you, it just doesn't get dark. If you can imagine now, this time of year, if you look out of your window at like 8:30, just as it's sort of the light's fading. It's not dark, mate. That's what it was like in the depths of night in Finland. And I can remember one night we've gone to bed, and Stevie's like, "Have you set your alarm?" I'm like, "Yes." "You definitely set your alarm?" I said, "Steve, yeah, I've definitely set my alarm. I'll wake you up in the morning." And we're getting up at like 5:30, mix the ground bait, sort the bait out, go to the venue and fish. And I can remember laying in bed this night and Stevie was snoring. Now, he hardly ever snores, but this night he was snoring. And I'm like, God, I've got to get some... Steve! Steve! He stops, and then he started snoring again. I'm like, oh my... I said, Steve! Steve! You're snoring! And he like... I said, Steve! And he sat up, bolt upright, looked out the window. He's gone, I'm up, I'm ready, come on then, let's go. And I'm like, it's 11:30 at night, Steve. It's not... Oh, what you wake me up for then? I said, you're snoring. And he said, oh, I looked out the window and it was light and I thought it was time to go. And we've laughed about that ever since. Fantastic story. Just one of those little things that happens when you're away with your mates and your teammates. But a brilliant result for the team. Again, I'm going to have a little look back through because there's a few matches I want to go over for the next match memories. I was, like I say, going to go on from 2010 and just keep going 11, 12, 13, 14. But there was matches that I've missed. Not thinking that how popular this was going to be. And I want to make sure that I cover all of the ones that not only stand out in my mind, but have stood me in good stead for future matches. So I hope you're all doing well. I hope you're all, adhering to all the lockdown advice that's still happening. You can get out fishing now. I've been out a couple of times myself just for the afternoon, caught a few fish. Really, really enjoying it. So I'd just like to finish this by saying thank you all for your kind comments on what I've been doing with the match memories. And stay safe, and I'll talk to you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.